sometimes you can get to the end of the year and you fall in a bit of a heap, and what happens is in between that period of holiday season, Christmas, New Year's and the rest, it becomes the old story of it's the middle of Jan, maybe even Feb, before you get back into things properly. And by that point, the year is beginning to get the jump on you rather than the other way around. So what this session is all about is making sure that you get the jump on 2023. So if you're keen to get the jump on next year and get on top of it before it gets on top of you, I want you to get in the chat box right now so I know you know where it is, and just chuck keen in the chat box. If you're keen to get the jump on next year, chuck keen in the chat box and we will get into it. All right, Adam Nettleton, keen as. Hell yeah, lots of keens in the chat box. So if you don't have the workbook, it looks like this. Grab that bad boy. You will need it, so we get into it. But let's get started. It is in there with the Dropbox folder. Grab it, get it printed, get it in front of you. Let's go. So what's the problem if we do not preload our year? Well, the first thing for me is it can feel out of control. So give me a hands up, team, if the end of the year, if the end of every calendar year feels like chaos. Give me a show of hands if it feels like it's really busy, it can get out of control sometimes. Yeah, right, most of us. So the end of the year is flat out and it can end up being a little bit out of control, and sometimes we can be unsure of what to do next. The next thing is you can start to land on these shiny objects. You can start chasing them. It's pretty easy to do that because of all the things that you've learned or you will learn coming up. It's so easy to do, especially being a part of a program like this. You see people all the time saying, I did this, I got this result, it was awesome. And so you're like, ah, sweet, that is great, that is exactly what I want to do. And you go and chase that instead of following what you should be following. And it can make you miss the key things that can drive you forward. And what that lands is you can be a little bit hopeful about what next year will bring. So I'm curious, who here has got to the end of the year and thought, man, this year was a bit of a blowout. Hopefully we crush next year. Anyone ever felt like that in any previous years in the past? Heaps of us, right? And so what happens is we kind of hope it comes all together and then it produces the result. And what the result is, you might not be sure. So what this session is all about is getting clarity, and we don't want to be like the old mates, the Warriors, who's always saying next year is our year. Every single year they say that, right? So what we want to do is we want to get focused on that result of what we want, and then we can get really clear about what to do to chase that and actually land it. So the other side of that, if you preload your year, you're in the driver's seat, right? You don't have to focus on what to do each week. You don't have to plan the route. You just get in the driver's seat and you drive, right? And it gives you that pathway to progress, right? That direct route, the way the crow flies, not through roundabouts and cul-de-sacs and traffic lights and everything else in between. We've got a clear pathway with the least amount of resistance and the least amount of muck around. And we can feel certain, right? Confidence that we have, and that rubs off onto the team as well. That means everybody's productive. Right? Think of a sport that you love. Right? When the team that you follow gets scored against, the captain doesn't go up to the team after, I love rugby, after the opposing team get a try. They don't come up and say, oh gosh, team, that sucks. I don't really know what I'm doing either. Right? Imagine if that was what was happening. Right? What they do is they go in and they say, hey guys, we've practiced this. We know what we're doing. We just need to do this, this, and this. And then we'll be firing and scoring and we'll get ahead. Right? That's the type of stuff that fills the team with confidence to go out and to get that result that you and them, everybody wants. So today will get you confident to give your team confidence to go and crush it. And then what we can do is we can crush the new year. When we know what we're doing, we can get in, we can do it, and we can crush it. No more hoping, no more praying, no more wishing. So what I'd love to know, just before we get into the key principles, is what in particular about this session today appealed to you? Like, why do you want to preload your year? Chuck it in the chat. Other than seeing Cam's smiling face today, what made you show up? Love to know. Right? Clarity, direction, Xavier. Yeah, intention, nice, love that. Sense of direction, cool. Goals, getting prepared for it, focus and direction for the new year, organization, having a focus plan to grow, nice clarity and intent, regain focus, feel organized, perfect, so we can achieve the profit that we want. Love it. Trying to be more prepared. Awesome. Planning, direction, focus. Love it. I think you guys are here for the right reasons. Feel like we're drowning, need some sort of grounding. Okay. Yep. Get ideas out of my head. Perfect. Organized, ready to go. All right. Nice. We're all here for some similar sort of reasons, which you will leave with. So 5 key principles that I think are really important to make sure that we get this right. So the first one is cash flow follows calendar. So we can hope things get better, or we can make sure they do, right? And there's this quote that's often attributed to our old mate Peter Drucker, but it actually wasn't him who said this. It was a guy named Alan Kay. And what he said was, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And what we're going to do today is we're going to set our future, and then the results that we're looking for will follow the calendar that we've put in place. So if you block things into your calendar that will drive the business forward, you'll actually do them, and you'll actually reap the results or the rewards of those activities that you do, right? Whereas if you don't block it and book it, it often won't happen, and you won't get the results that you're chasing. Make sense? So cash flow follows calendar, the results follow the calendar. So if you want next year to be amazing, awesome, and get the results, block the things in that will make it amazing. So if you want to make holidays and activities or strategies to happen, get them in place. If there's money-making events that you need to make sure you're at or you're creating, trade shows, marketing campaigns, etc., they should be in the calendar from the start, right? And then they will happen. Second key principle is think once. So this is about not getting distracted by all of the stuff that you learn week to week. We always learn heaps, right? Like I said earlier about shiny objects, there's so many things in the Facebook group, in webinars, at boot camps, and what they can do often is they can drag you in directions that you don't need right now. And if you think about those messy arterial routes, those urban roads that often run around like spaghetti, versus a freeway or a train track that goes from A to B, which one's going to get you there faster? Going to be the freeway, right? Obviously. So what we're wanting to do is we want to plan the freeway and follow it. Don't need to be continuously checking a map. Lay those train tracks, get out there and do it. Third one is we've got to get the big rocks in first. So most of you guys would have heard this yarn or this chat about the 7 habits. But if you have not read this book, it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I would absolutely recommend that. Get it on Audible. It's an amazing book. Stephen Covey is a legend. But he talks about this story or this analogy around putting some big rocks and pebbles and some sand into a jar, right? So I'll just quickly talk it through. There's a glass jar and you can fit those 3 things in. And there's a couple of ways you can go about it. On the left-hand side, you can see on the slide here, we've started with the sand. So you pour the sand in, it gives you a block at the bottom of the jar. You pour the pebbles in on top, makes another block, and then you try to fit all the big rocks in on top. And what ends up happening is they pile at the top, they're half in, or there's a bunch that aren't actually inside the glass jar. But if you do it the other way around instead, like this one on the right, you put the big rocks in first, and then when you pour the pebbles in, what they do is they fall between the cracks inside those big rocks, and then when you pour the sand in, it'll fall in between every little crack and crevice it possibly can, and you've got a much better chance of fitting everything inside the glass jars, or inside the jar. Now, what the big rocks are like the things, the strategies, the activities that make a really big impact, or they'll make a huge difference, or they're really hard to fit around other things. You can't just quickly sit down and smash out like 30 pricing templates around, doing some phone calls. It's pretty difficult, right? And you have to have some dedicated focus and planning to make sure you do that. You have to make time to make that sort of stuff happen. You also can't finish work today and think, oh, I'm going to take a 2-week holiday, right? That sort of stuff needs a bit more planning to actually make happen. So those are your big rocks. The pebbles often are like operational tasks. So they're the stuff that keeps the business wheels turning, right? They don't necessarily change the game for you. And then the sand's like the most flexible or the most distracting stuff. And what tends to happen, we see this all the time, is most people fill their jar sand first, right? And it's because sand feels urgent, right? Ringing phone, sitting in front of you, it's pretty hard not to answer it, right? What's going to be on the other end? What's a worst case scenario that goes through your head and you tend to answer it? Might be a Facebook notification, right? Who's trying to talk to me? Email comes in maybe. You know, this could be new work. Should I have a look? It's hard to ignore. Lots of people, they fill their time or their jar sand first. If you can relate to that, give me a show of hands. Anyone experienced that before? Pretty much everyone, eh? Yeah, so we need to block these things out. Holidays, boot camps, webinars, coaching sessions, team social days, planning days, performance reviews, trade shows, monthly newsletters. Like this sort of stuff needs to be blocked and booked so that it happens. And all of these things are big rocks. We've got to block them and book them out. The key to holidays is to plan and to book in advance, right? And by the end of the session, my goal is to have everybody on the session today to have a holiday booked somewhere. I don't mind where, somewhere, right? If it's last minute, it won't happen, right? So we've got to like pay the deposit and force yourself to get there, okay? And then the last rock I always see that's missed is rest, right? You've got to plan to rest. Give me a show of hands. Who feels like they could use some rest? Anybody here feel like they could use some rest? Most of the time, most of us don't put in the time or make that rest happen, right? Phil's been attributed this quote, which is work ethic is important, and 100%, I think everybody that's sitting here in front of us thinks that work ethic is important, but rest ethic is what makes work ethic sustainable, right? He often says that, and I think it's really true. And so we've got to make sure that we block that rest and we know when we're having it so that we can make our work time way more effective. All right. Number 4 is you've got to do a stress test. You've got to stress test this bad boy. So once you've planned your calendar and once you feel like it looks good, you've got to ask yourself a question like, if I follow this, will it get me the result that I'm after? Have I double booked? Do I have the right team to make this happen? Have I created a rod for my own back? Can I survive this? Is this sustainable? Yeah, so we've got to make sure we stress test it. And the last one is we've got to work the plan. So you got to put the blinkers on and follow the plan. So effectively we turn the brain off and we turn that engine on and we get into that blissful state of no required thinking about what you need to do to reap those rewards. You just turn that engine on, you've got your plan, you go and follow it, you do it. All right. So just a quick check-in. Love to know what's been most interesting or valuable from this so far. Chuck it in the chat box for me. What's been most interesting or valuable so far? What have you taken away? And then we'll get into the meat of this. Plan to rest. Yeah, it's a big one, eh? Pre-book your holidays. Yep, we're going to do that today. Stick to the plan, rest ethic, rest. Apparently I'm having a holiday. Yes, you are, Mr. Nettleton. We're going to make it happen. How would you stress that? Yeah, a lot of the time it's even just a double check. It's a look, we're going to do a little bit at the end. So we'll make sure we hit that, right? Big rocks and sand. Love the quote. We talk about rest a lot, but attributing it to work might help get that through to the team. Boom, nice. Planning of holidays, relook at the big rocks, predict the future by creating it. Yeah, love that. Blinkers, block it, nice, lots of block it. We've got to block it and book it, right? We've got to plan for this stuff. Okay, cool. It feels like you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. So let's jump into it. This is a doing session, remember. So we need to get out the workbook now, and I want you guys to jump to page 4, and it looks like this. So jump into your workbooks, grab that. That'll be pretty helpful for the next part. So like I said earlier, there will be things that pop up. They always do. And when you look at some of these things, you can see the benefit in it. And it comes to the question of, should I do this? Should I do this now? Or is it a distraction for me? Is it a shiny object? And sometimes it can be a little bit confusing about where it sits. So this is a little tool that we use to figure out if like I should do it or I should just park it or delegate it, right? And there's a few questions that come into it that I always ask myself. So the first question I'll always ask myself is this a part of my mission, right? Is this in line with what I'm trying to achieve long term? Is this what we do? right? So, you know, for example, if I had the opportunity to do a bunch of commercial work, but I don't do any commercial work normally, and I also don't have anyone on my team who knows how to do it and will crush it, doesn't really align, does it? So in that case, that's a no, right? But if it is a part of your mission, and you can give that one the golden tick, the yes, then it becomes the next question. So the next question that we need to ask ourselves is this a priority, right? Is this a priority for me right now, right? Is it a now thing? Is this the biggest thing here, or is there something else, right? Does this idea trump what I've planned to do right now? Because when you say yes to something, you're always saying no to something else, all right? Is this worth sacrificing the other thing that I had on my plan? So if it's not, that's a big fat no, right? Otherwise, if it is a priority right now, you move down a step. So if we've hit that and we're stoked, yep, that is definitely a priority. The next question to ask is this a me thing, right? So does this come into my role, right? Is this my part in the business to do? And what you should always be looking for is, no, it's not. And then we can go to a couple of other things, right? So the first point here is, if it's not your job, can you delegate it? Or can you outsource this? Right? And I know for a lot of people that I've talked to in this Zoom call right now, that delegating or taking things off our plate can actually be quite tough for some people. So, you know, if you struggle with delegating or outsourcing and you like to do it all, chuck me in the chat. I'd love to know. This is a good ownership time. Who struggles with this? They just take it all on and try to do everything themselves, right? I see a couple of hands up as well. Lots of people, even some people saying, yep, that's Damo, yep, that's Chris, that's Jamie, putting it on. Lots of people struggle with this stuff, right? So if you have a little tool that helps you, it can help you check yourself on this, right? Is this a me thing, or can I delegate it? Can I outsource it and get this off my plate, right? But if it is you, and sometimes it is you, and that's a yes, the last thing that we can do is we can lock that bad boy in, right? So lock it in, Eddie. It's go time, right? But we want to obviously make that as less as possible if we can. Delegating is awesome, Mr. Motherwell. I love it. Okay, so that's a little tool that you can use if you feel like you're picking up too much stuff, or if you're looking at things and constantly taking those distractions or those shiny objects on. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start planning. So the first thing in this planning rhythm here is we're going to look at our big rocks. So some nice big rocks to start with are right up the top left here in this section. So we're going to focus here for the start of this. And what we want to focus on are those nice big rocks of money and time. So as I said before, cash flow follows calendar, right? And results follow calendar. So what we want to do is we want to know what we're wanting to achieve here. So we've sort of done this for you guys who came to boot camp. We're going to be able to roll through this pretty quickly. But what we're going to do on the first part of this is we're going to look at what we're currently doing. So the first question right at the top is, what is my current monthly revenue, right, on average? And you guys should know this. Where are you at right now? You might be at, you know, $80,000 a month. Turnover, revenue, income, all the same stuff. You might be at 30K, you might be at 500K. And I want you to write that number in that first box where I've written 80K right up the top. So pop in that number for you, whatever the revenue is that you're doing on average at the moment over the last few months. Where are you at? All right. Under that, it's our net profit. So what is your net profit result likely to be this year? This is not a goal. This is what you're actually going to do, right? And you should have a pretty good idea of what you're aiming for. We're nearly at the end of the year. So what is that result going to be? What is it likely to be? So that might be, you know, 100,000. That might be an example. Yours might be 250, 400K, whatever that number is, write that down. All right. And then lastly, how many hours do you currently work per week? Right? How many hours do you currently work per week? And you've got to be really honest about this, because this is time at work. If you're going home and answering phone calls or doing quotes or invoicing after hours, you got to put that time in. And if you're working on the weekend, make sure you own up to that and write that number down. I won't ask you what it is, don't worry. But I need you to own it, okay? So let's just say that's 60 hours for me. What is that number for you? Write that number down. Okay. Now, the next part of this is we want to focus on where we're going. Right? Now, this is the number where we should have put some thought into already. That is not a sum of all employees. That is just your hours, Dan. Just the hours that you do working in or on your business. All right? Okay. So the next part, we should have an idea already. But by the end of next year, what do we want that monthly revenue turnover income to be? Now, if you're doing 80K in revenue right now and you write down something like 85, I'd ask what you're doing here, right? Push the boat. Most of you guys should have done this already if you did your 1-year business plan, so that should be pretty easy, okay? So I might be aiming for 180K. I want a 100K stretch in my results monthly by the end of next year, right? It's doable, pushes you to do something different to get that result. You can't just keep doing the same thing and expect that different result, right? And we're all here implementing, so we should be able to get that different result. So write that number down. Now what we want to do is put in our net profit number that we're aiming for, right? You should have that already, some sort of number that's net profit for the year. Yeah. What would that look like at the end of next year? So in my case, maybe it's 250 grand. I'm pushing for that extra 150, right? How would life change if I had an extra 150 grand? Make it a goal. If you don't make it a goal, it won't happen, right? So once you've done that, chuck done in the chat. I just want to make sure we've got it. Most of us should have it pretty quickly. Once you've got that net profit figure, chuck it down. All right. I just need to extend my camera. I want to do a little exercise real quick. I need everyone to look at me. Look right in the camera. All right. My face will be up there somewhere. And you're all on mute, so I won't hear you. But what I want you to do is I want you to tell me loud. I don't mind who else is around. I won't hear it. I want you to tell me how much net profit you're going to make. So if I was to do this, I'm going to say, I'm going to make $250,000 in net profit next year. I want you to do the same thing, all right? So with me, I'm going to make $250,000 next year. Okay, we've committed. It's out loud. It's written down. We're going to make it. I like it. All right, sweet. So the next thing that we have to do is we're going to commit to our hours. So this will be different for everybody. Some people love work. I love work. It's like a big part of what I love to do. So that's all good. I'm not really trying to reduce my hours, but what do you want those hours to look like? Maybe it's no more working nights and weekends and you're just doing 40. Maybe you're trying to do less and take 3-day weekends. Whatever that looks like, write that number down. All right. How many hours do you want to work per week in a year? Right? If it's 30 hours, that's not a pie in the sky dream. All right, what we'll do next is figure out what we need to do to make it happen. Okay? Now that you've done that, I'd love to know, to achieve the stuff that we've written up already, what activities do you think we'll need to do to make this sort of stuff happen? Just pop in any ideas you have. What sort of stuff do you think we'll have to do so that we can achieve our end of next year? Just 3 goals there that we've put down. Our revenue per month, our net profit, our time, right? Hiring, yeah, hire more staff, increase the team, delegate responsibilities. Like it, keep chucking some more ideas in, keep building the team, hire staff, trust employees, that's massive. Team building, sweet, marketing, hiring, systems, hire, delegate, planning, systems, staff, increases team, marketing, sales procedures, nice, build more systems, sweet, work more efficiently, yeah, that might be team or systems. Staff skill level, sweet, training. Nice, hiring, delegate, systems, organization, marketing systems, more staff, train and delegate. All right, culture. Yeah, cool, sales process, nice. Bunch of stuff, right? And there's a key theme here that I've noticed in this, is you have to learn something to make these happen. You have to do stuff, you have to implement the activities, right? And the key part is you probably have to learn stuff and breathe. I hope you know how to do that already. If you didn't have to learn anything to nail the stuff that we just put in that list, you probably would have done it already, right? And what tends to happen is we get really focused on a result, right? But what we need to do is we need to focus on the activities or the strategies that will get us the result. If you focus on the activity, you'll do it and you'll nail it, right? So an example that I always think of is, hiring. That was in there. It's an outcome that you can't completely control. But what you can control is your ad. You can control your interview process. You can control the time that it takes you to get to the next step of the process. So we want to focus on the activities. Now, when we think about the learning part, there's some boxes down the bottom of this page, and we need to get really clear on the learning that we need so that we can implement some of the stuff that we're going to do. So the first learning that we need to lock in and plan for is boot camp, right? So give me a show of hands if you came to the last boot camp that we did a few weeks ago, physically or in person. I mean, physically or online. Damn, that was the same thing. All right, sweet. Lots of us came, right? If you loved it, put 2 hands up. If you came to boot camp and you loved it, put 2 hands up. Nice, right? It's awesome. That's the first thing we need to do. Second thing is we need to make sure we have the 6-week planning session locked out. If you come to this session, you'll make a plan. If you make a plan and you follow the plan, you'll do the activities. And if you do the activities, you'll get a result. Yeah, so we've got to block and book these. The next thing is we need to block out the webinars. There's constant learning happening while you're a part of the program, right? There's 2 webinars every single week. One on the Tuesday is to learn something. The second one on a Thursday is to get some help, right? If you don't learn stuff and get help, you'll probably be stuck doing the stuff that you did last year, which might get you the same result, right? So we've got to lock it in. We've got to learn the stuff, and then we can get that new result that we're chasing. And you might want to put in here maybe some books. Maybe there's some specific books that you've got planned that you want to read or listen to. All right. The next part of this is we've got to figure out our frequency or our cadence, right? So these are pretty obvious for some of them. So boot camps, for example, they happen 3 times a year, right? So these come up 3 times a year in March, in July, and November. Yes, we do have dates for the next boot camp. I will make sure you get across that today. All right. So our boot camps, they happen 3 times a year. And then in between every boot camp, we run this thing called a 6-week planning session. They also happen 3 times a year. So we've got to make sure we lock those out. And then the webinars, they're happening 2 times per week. So that is on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And then your cadence with your books might change, and that's really up to you in terms of how much you want to get through, right? So for me personally, I need to learn a lot, and one of our key values in PT is learning, right? And so my goal for my reading is to get through 1 book a week, and that way I can get to the end of the year and I can say I've read 52 books and feel pretty good about myself. And then obviously I can take a bunch of learnings to give to you guys as well. And I always think of this, but Tony Robbins, he always says that if you read somebody's book, you've consumed 10 years of their life. So what I think of at the end of the year is I'm like, damn, if I've read 50 books, that's 500 years of people's experience. That's a lot of experience in the old brain here. Some of it might have left, but that's all good. But what we've got to figure out is our cadence. So, some people have goals of things like, 15 pages per day. Right? Or it might be 2 chapters per day, or it might be 2 books a month. Whatever that is for you, that's cool. But we just want to write it down and commit to some sort of cadence. All right. So I'd love to know from you guys, what's one big rock for learning that you're really going to commit to? All right. What's one big rock for learning that you really want to commit to? And I want you to chuck it in the chat box. Right? Is it webinars or get into the boot camps? Is it reading more books? Maybe you want to do something like join a BNI chapter. you know, whatever the thing is, I'd love to get some commitments around what we're going to do to really commit to our learning over the next year. Boot camps, webinars, reading more, Scott, nice. 6-week planning, awesome. Audiobooks, must get back to that. Yeah, they're so good, right? Get them on in the car, get them on in the gym. Right, whatever you do, I do the same thing. I always do it when I mow my lawns every single time. 6-week plans, 1 book a month. Nice, I like that commitment. Sweet. All of the above. Right, pick your cadence as well, right? Make sure you write that down. Reading, definitely more books. Lots of people want to read more. Nice, getting to the weekly webinars, make sure we're planning. Good stuff. Right, audiobooks in the car. Nice. Podcasts. Love it. It's awesome. Sweet, heaps going on there, right? So we've committed to that. So next page in here, I just want to quickly go through this, is the bouts. Now, lots of you guys will know how these bouts work, but I pretty much just want to quickly get us to commit to something. So how the bouts work is effectively the numbers, right? Looking at 50 grand, 100 grand, all the way up to 2 million. This is our net profit that we're aiming for, right? And when we measure these at boot camps, we take a 4-month run rate and we extrapolate that out to a year. We essentially take an average and we push it out to 12 months. And that is the bout that you get, right? And so we're all at a bout level right now. You might have received one from coming to the boot camps. And if you have, I want you to circle it, right? Put a big circle around where you're at right now, okay? And if you haven't received one just yet, you've got a net profit figure that you identified before. That's effectively the bout level that you're at right now. So if you're making 100 grand, you'd be sitting at a yellow bout. So what I want you to do is I want you to circle that. That's a yearly net profit, Cam. All right, so we're looking at this number right here, yearly net profit, okay? And if you have one of these already, circle that. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go to your goal up the top and look at where you're gonna be at the end of next year. And I want you to draw an arrow to that next bout. So if I was at 300 grand and I wanted to get to 500, that's my arrow. All right, so draw that arrow down. And then what you've got to do is every time you make a short-term plan, right, like a 6-week plan or anything else, I want you to look at this and it will help you shape your decisions, right? Will these strategies that I'm putting down to work on get me to that new bout, get me to that net profit goal, get me to that reduction in hours or where I want to see my role in the business, right? We've got to think like that, because if your goal is to keep the lights on, hey, you'll keep the lights on. But if your goal is to improve your profit by, you know, $250,000, you'll pick the things that'll get you there. If that makes sense, give me a big thumbs up. Excellent. Killer. All right, sweet. Let's move through into the pebbles. So on page 7, we're working through the pebble builder. All right, now this is the stuff that are going to help you keep the wheels moving like we talked about before, and make sure that you don't have any hiccups through the next year. Because one of the most difficult things that can happen is hiccups getting in the way of you growing, right? Now, the first thing that I want to focus on is holidays. Now, I know I said before that holidays are big rocks, and they are, but I'm here normalizing holidays, all right? Who here takes holidays? Give me a show of hands if you regularly take holidays. Oh, some hands went down. Few of us, good. All right, I put the word regularly in there, and then some regrets came out. All right, all good. So there's a few people here, but not that many people are taking regular holidays, right? And if you think about this, it's actually kind of weird that not more of us are taking more holidays, because if you're an employee or somebody else, you'd be taking all sorts of holidays, right? If you're in New Zealand, you get like all sorts of weeks of holidays and sick days and annual leave days and bloody public holidays. I think it's pretty much the same in Australia as well, right? Maybe not so much in the States, sorry. But if you're an employee, you'd get holidays. So we want to make sure that as business owners, you've taken the risk, you should be getting those holidays. So the question is, how many holidays and when, right? If you want to take a holiday and get to the mountain and go snowboarding, you know when this is, you can block it out, right? Yeah, that's what I said, Amen. Love it. All right, sweet. So first thing we want to do is we want to check in here. How many holidays and when are we going to take them? right? And this is for you to think about right now. If you want to go snowboarding and you want to get to Queenstown to do it, there's a window of time. You can't do it in February, all right? February is summer here for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere. All right? If I want to take a break at Christmas and I want that to be longer, will I also take a break in the middle of the year or the school holidays to hang out with the kids? All right? For example, Tony, he takes 6 weeks off every Christmas from like the middle of December to the end of Jan. And then he takes one holiday or 1 week of holidays every school holidays. It happens like clockwork and it's planned way in advance. And we know that, so when we plan stuff, we know if we want Tony to be there, we can't do it then because we know he's on holiday, right? It's blocked. For me personally, I take breaks at Christmas, but a longer one in the middle of the year. This year, I'm going to make sure I go to Europe in August. That's my plan. It's already blocked out. I've told Phil. He can't say no anymore. All right? So what we've got to do is we've got to block in those holidays. So, for example, you might say, I'm going to take one in February. It's going to be a long weekend, right? Maybe the next one is in July and the next one is in October. Maybe the July one is, 1 week, and maybe the October one is 2 weeks. So I want you to get those locked in and written down right now. What do we want to do? All right, and where are you going to go? All right. Over the Christmas holidays, I'm going to make sure I get over to Tauranga. I've got a lot of family over there, and we just went to Queenstown for a long weekend, and Sarah wants to go back again. So we're going to. And that's going to be over Christmas. And then I am going to make sure that I get to Europe. I've already started contacting my friends and said, I'm coming to stay with you. Make sure you have a bed. So it's already talking about and happening. We've got to do that sort of stuff. All right. Now, for those of you that came to the July boot camp, you would have heard Mike Michalowicz talk, right? And he's got his famous book called Clockwork. At the start of Clockwork and during that webinar, he makes you block in a 4-week holiday, right at the start. And then as you read the book and you go through the concepts and you implement everything, it's about getting your business ready so that you can take that 4-week holiday. So some of you guys may have done this. So write them down. If you haven't, I want you to commit to that. So Adam, yes, you, at Mr. Nettleton, you are taking a holiday and you need to write it down. Okay? So what I'd love to know is once you've written that down, where are you going to go? Put it in the chat box. What is one of your destinations or all of your destinations? I don't mind. Where are you going to get to? Chuck it in the chat once you've written it down. Fiji cruise in July, Cody. Nice. Get into Alaska, Zach. Awesome. Europe, May to June. I won't see you there, brother. All good. Carmen going to Europe to the beach house. Woo, that's so good. A few people going to Europe. Wow, how good. Australia and Florida for George. How good. School holidays, Queenstown for skiing. Love it. Aussie theme parks. Oh, I love the theme parks. They're so good. Movie World's my favorite one. USA, September, October for 4 weeks, Michelle. Love it. Fishing trip. Nice. Europe in May. All good. Haven't decided on the location. Try decide now, Ryoko. Rarotonga in June. Raro, Whit Sundays. Oh, I'd love to get to the Whit Sundays. South Australia and Fiji holiday for Bryony. Nice. Love it. Get to Noosa for Tom. Cape York for Sarah. Get married. Oh, so good. Queensland. Nice. Lots of going on. Any boot camps in Aussie next year? Yes. July. I'll give you the dates soon. It's not actually in the calendar. Joe's trying to book the final stuff. Amy, don't tell Joe I said that. I don't know if it's public. Rugby World Cup for Simon. Woo, that's going to be awesome. Oz in September. Nice. Get to Japan for AP. Done. Cruise in Hawaii. Nice. Awesome. Caravan trips anywhere and everywhere. Pick some destinations, Nikki. I'd love to hear it. PTS Airbnbs in NZ. Nice. Just purchased a farm. We'll spend a week each school holidays. Oh, how good. Get to the Victorian golf courses, Haydo. Love it. Tassie, Northern Territory. Get to the snow for Gareth. Caravanning. Awesome. There's so many good destinations. Canada skiing and Europe for the rugby for Greg. All right, so good. So we've got some destinations. So now what we've got to do is we've got to start looking at our core functions that are going to help us get there. So there's quite a few core functions that we can look at. I'm going to write down a few that we need to make sure that we have some cadence behind so that we can make sure we're looking at this stuff regularly and reduce the hiccups. So first one that always comes to my mind is the default diary or the default calendar, right? Whatever you call it. And what this is all about is making sure that we tweak it as things change. We've got to look at this frequently, right? We're always and constantly implementing and changing our role. Often we'll delegate a big task. And when we do that, if we take all of the 20s off of our plate, or if we take all of the team management off of our plate, or if we take the pricing off our plate, or we get off the tools, we've got to change this bad boy, right? Because it has to work for us. And so for me, I do mine quarterly. Unless something's not working, I'll do it more frequently. But we've got to commit to doing this frequently, right? Quarterly, I would say, is the absolute minimum that you should be looking at this. And often when you think about the default calendar, when you feel like time's not on your side, we have to go look at it even faster. I'm not sure if any of you have experienced this yet, but I've talked to a lot of people about this. Often what happens is we make our default calendar, we stick it on the wall, and then when it stops working, I'm just like, oh, that doesn't work anymore, and I don't pay attention to it or use it anymore, all right? Anyone here ever done that before? Give me a show of hands if you have. Oh, lots of us. Yeah, so we got to look at it, tweak it, all right? Next thing, pricing reviews, right? We have to do these frequently because at the moment, everything's getting more expensive, right? Materials, labor, fuel, it's going up. And if it's going up, you should be going up, right? We've got to stay ahead of the 8 ball here. Now, normally I'd probably say quarterly as well for pricing reviews. For some of us, depending on your trade, it might even be more frequently than that. And I would say at the moment, you probably need to be looking at this bi-monthly. Otherwise, you can slip beyond the curve and you can miss your margins. And when you miss your margins, you'll miss your profit and it won't get you to where you want to be, right? It's staying ahead of the hiccups. Next one is team management. All right, so looking at things like your performance reviews. Sorry about my writing. I'll talk it out. All right, how often are these happening? All right, if you think about performance reviews, this is all about keeping our foot on the gas and the team wanting to show up and doing a great job. When they show up and they want to do a great job, they'll be efficient, they'll contribute, they'll use initiative, they'll self-solve. And so we got to be doing these in a good cadence as well. Now, I'd always say minimum you should do these twice a year. Quarterly is optimal. Minimum twice a year we should be looking at this sort of stuff formally. Next one is team organization. So that might be things like planning days. Right, here at PT, we do this quarterly. Every single person in the business is a part of these planning days. So everyone can contribute thoughts on making their roles better and making the business a better place to work. Right, so we do this every single quarter. And then the other side is like the fun days. So making sure that you plan these and make them a really high priority. Because you can't just wake up on a Friday and go, oh, all right, it's a fun day today. Let's get everyone skydiving. It's pretty hard to organize, right? You probably have jobs planned and everything else. So we need to lock this stuff out, and we should do this sorts of things quarterly as well. So planning them, knowing what you're doing in advance, making sure the team know and they're prepped and ready to get into it, okay? Client relations is another big one. Does anyone here have any key clients that they take out, wine and dine? Give me a show of hands if you do. Any key clients that you really look after, you might wine and dine them, take them out, look after them. So if you do that, we want to make sure that we schedule that sort of stuff, right? Relationships are a bit like a plant, yeah? And what happens if you don't water a plant? You get a bit sad and droopy and die, right? But don't put this stuff off. And I always think about relationships, and sometimes, especially as things have been lately, everybody's busy, and COVID's been in the way of some of our times as well. It's easy to go, oh, there's a barrier there. Oh, I can't do it. I'll put it off. I'll wait till later. Wait till it's easier. All right, but we should make this sort of stuff happen. So that might be, in any sort of cadence. Commit to your cadence. If you've got some key clients that you want to look after, commit to it. And the last one here is marketing campaigns. So if we're looking to really improve our turnover, and we want it to shoot by 100 grand or more per month, we may need to do some work to make sure that the workflow is coming through. And this sort of stuff needs to be planned, right? There's parts to it, there's follow-up, you know, all the sort of stuff that needs to come into it. And I don't know, maybe just give me a show of hands. Who here's tried or done lumpy mail before? Right? Few of us. Lumpy mail is a marketing activity that we talk about quite frequently if you're wanting to get business to business work. There's heaps of stuff involved to create a really good lumpy mail campaign. You have to order the lump and create the sales letter. You have to schedule in the follow-up, do the follow-up, set up the automation of the emails. You've got to meet people and have conversations, right? So if you're doing lumpy mail, what's the frequency? Maybe you have some slumps in your workflow, or you have some seasonal work that you do, right? And if you do any seasonal work, you may have some marketing that you need to prep to flatten it out and to make sure that your turnover is much more consistent than it currently is. Bring those times up, right? Because if you get to a dead patch and you start marketing, you could be too late, right? So that's a few examples of some pebbles, some core functions to make sure that we reduce hiccups. You might have some other examples that you want to put in there. That's cool, right? But those are some things that we've got to make sure that you keep up with. Frequency of client relations, I'd say that's probably a quarterly task, Matt and Lou, if I was thinking about it. It depends on the needs of your clients, though. You might have some that really don't need it, and it could be 6 months, but we should block and book those. When are we going to do it? Are we doing it as a group exercise? Is it grab all the key clients together and get a corporate box and go watch a footy? Whatever the thing is. Yeah, have an event at work where they come and have some beers. Okay. Next part of this is the sand. So this is everything else. And I want to be really clear here when we go through this. There's a few things in here: family events, birthdays, personal care. When you look at these things, sand doesn't mean they're not important, right? These are absolutely crucial things. They're kind of like big rocks. But the reason why I chuck them in here, in the sand area, is because unlike some of the other big rocks, a lot of these are a bit more flexible, right? So we still want to block and book these, but that's why we're on this page instead, okay? So first one I think we should start with is some extra learning, right? So there's probably some key learning that maybe you want to do that isn't a part of your big rocks, right? So there could be a few different things to get in there. It might be things like, I don't know, master electricians, if they have events that you want to get to, right? Write that sort of stuff down, get it locked in. Maybe you have some suppliers that run events and you want to get to those as well. You want to get your team to them. Maybe there's awards nights, right? There's a few people, Mitch, Jenny, that, you know, have submitted themselves as potential to win, and they've gone away with a finalist or a prize. Yeah, so if you do that sort of stuff, or you want to do that sort of stuff, like lock it in, make it happen. Yeah. Next one down here is your spring cleaning. So who here, just give me a show of hands if you've ever thought to yourself, man, my vans could use a scrub. Anyone here think that? You of us? Yeah, right. So if you need to get that done, you need to block it in, right? So maybe that's things like your vans. Maybe for a few of us, we've got stock in the workshop or stock in the vans, and you need to lock in your stock takes, right? If you get your stock set up right, then your P&L is definitely going to be right. If you're not stock taking, maybe your materials aren't accounted for, or they're in the wrong place, and that might not be setting you up for getting the right results back. Yeah. Or maybe you have looked around your office and you've thought that your premises or your office needs a big clean, right? I'm sure a few of you have looked around and gone, oh man, we need a bit of a clean to go on around here. We need to get all hands on deck to make sure it's actually, you know, good. So if that's you, make sure you block it in. Personal care. This could be things like getting to the gym, right? If I don't start my day personally with some sort of exercise, I come in way grumpier and everybody notices. And that's not cool. So I need to make it happen. So I have to make sure I block that sort of stuff in my calendar. That could be hiking, right? It could be, I know I'm being a bit selfish right here, but it could be things like massages, right? Sarah, my wife, she absolutely needs these because she gets really sore muscles and she needs to have these quite frequently, or at least she tells me she does anyway. So she goes and she blocks it out and makes it happen, right? That could be things like CrossFit. That one's for you, Dale. Maybe you get to the spa, maybe you do a bit of yoga, right? Whatever these sorts of things are, make sure you block these out. Yeah, if that's there and you want to make it happen, what sort of things need to be in that category for you? Okay. Maybe if family events, there might be a few things coming up for you that you need. For me, when I think about family events, my dad's mum is turning 80 this year, and it's a pretty big one, and she wants to get away from Tauranga where she lives, and she wants to get up to Whirianga. So we're going to do a big long weekend up there, and I need to make sure that I get that time blocked away so I don't book anything else, and I go. That'd be pretty shit if her grandson didn't show up to her 80th, right? So if you have something like that, maybe you need to do it. If there's things like reunions going on and you need to block it out, maybe that's something you need to ensure you have in your calendar. All right. Birthdays could be family, right? Friends, or alternatively, maybe even your team, right? How good does it feel when somebody remembers your birthday? It's bloody awesome, right? And your team will tell you their birthdays. When they sign up for your team, they write it on their contract. It's always there. So if it's in their contract, put it in your calendar. And then when it's their birthday, you can say, hey, happy birthday, right? So chuck it in, lock it out. Maybe your clients, right? Get them a gift. They'll feel pretty special, right? Cool, nice, like it. Hobbies. Give me a show of hands if you'd love to make more time to do more of your hobbies. It's all of us, eh? So we've got to block these sorts of things out. So maybe you want to get a bit more golf in. Maybe you want to get to some more concerts, right? Write the band down that you'd like to see, right? Maybe you play in a band and you don't get enough time doing that sort of stuff, right? Block it out, make it happen. Maybe do a bit of drag racing, or you need to work on your car so you can actually go drag racing. Do it, right? But we've got to block this sort of stuff out so that we can make it happen. Okay. So we've gone through a few pages. Let's check in. Give me a quick show of hands if you've got some stuff in your big rock builder, in your pebbles, and in your sand. Who's got that filled out? Nice. Okay. So what we're not going to do today is we're not going to put this into the calendar as a team. But what I want you to do over the next week is I want you to put this stuff into your calendar over the next year. How can I book weather for fishing? That's a great question. I can't help you with that. Sorry, that's not on my skill set. So start with the big rocks. And it's really important that we start with the big rocks and we get those things in your calendar first. And then we move to the pebbles, that the wheels are moving and we don't have many hiccups. And then the sand last. That can fit around everything else so you can get everything done. All right? That's what we're going to do over the next week. So what I do want to do is I want to go through the calendars that are in the workbook. So the New Zealand and Australia calendar is in on page 9, and the US and Canada calendar is in on page 8. The reason why they're different is because anyone who lives in North America, you live a day in the past, and so everything's just the day before. Okay? So us in the future, here in NZ and Oz, I'll go through this calendar just to make sure everyone knows what the key dates are, and that way you can block those in. All right. So the first one is the education webinar. So all of the dates in yellow. And this is the webinar that you show up to and you learn something. All right. So every single Tuesday or Monday, if you live in NA, you'll show up and you'll learn something. All right. Whatever I need to tell myself, Dave, I will continue to do it. Next one is in green, the Q&A webinar. This is where you show up and get help. When you need help with something or you want to move forward, get clarity, make sure you're making progress on your plan. It happens every single Thursday through every single week, unless we're doing a boot camp or a 6-week planning session. So that's where you get your help. The KPI due dates, as most of you know, that's every single 15th of every single month. And that's important to make sure that you get your numbers in. So we know you know where your numbers are at, and we know where your numbers are at, so we can make sure you're working on the right stuff to hit those goals that you wrote at the top, right? To hit that profit target, to hit that revenue target, and everything else in between. And the light blue, that's our 6-week planning session. Like I said, happens 3 times a year. In between every boot camp, one in Jan, one in May, and one in September. Well, that's actually August. It was September. I wasn't set up for that. All right, that's a 6-week planning session, okay? The pit crew, that is the session that happens once a month for your teams, anyone in your key office roles, estimator, ops manager, office people, those guys, they have a session for them every month to help them get better in their roles. And then boardroom, we'll ignore that for now. You have your own calendar and I will send that out to you very soon. And then boot camps, the boot camps happen 3 times a year. So one in March, that one's going to be in Auckland. One in July, that's going to be happening in Australia. Not 100% exactly where just yet, but that's getting locked in. And then one in November, which I don't know yet. So we'll get to that later. All right, but you've got the key dates there that you can block these out and book these in now. All right, if that makes sense, team, give me a big double thumbs up just so I know we're cool with that. Excellent, nice. All right, so next thing that we've got to talk about is we've got to make sure that we deconflict. So I talked about this briefly at the start, but if we look at these things and we've got big rocks put in, and then we notice that some of the big rocks and the pebbles in the sand, they conflict, we've got to ask ourselves some questions and move what we can move, right? So we've got to think about things like birthdays, public holidays, school holidays, right? If you've gone and booked a team fun day, but it's also your daughter's birthday, right? Change the fun day, yeah? Sometimes it's easy just to put it in the calendar, and when it gets to the day, we're like, oh, fuck, whoops, overlook that, right? But we should be really deliberate about this. We should look at it and see what we can shift, right? You can't shift your daughter's birthday, unfortunately, but you can shift the fun day, especially if you do it now, right? So make sure that you go through and you deconflict what's there. So the next steps from here is what we need to do is we need to go and commit to these things in the calendar. So get your calendar set up with your big rocks, your pebbles, and your sand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a post up on the Facebook group, and I want you to tell me what your first holiday destination is. All right, so I'm going to pop that up on the Facebook group, and I want you guys to commit to that and lock it in. All right, so that's pretty much a session, guys. What I wanted to do is just open it up, see if there's any last minute questions. So if you have any questions, just chuck question in the chat box or write your question. Otherwise, I will leave you back to your Tuesday or Monday, wherever you are. Any good ideas of a good calendar to use for the year? Auckland is our boot camp as our, Auckland for boot camp is our first stop, nice. Yeah, if you want to use yearly calendars, I always recommend, I think there's Office Max in Australia as well. They sell like a big yearly planner. I would get a big yearly planner that you can put on the wall and write all the stuff out. That helps keep it really visual all the time. I'll take a picture of one of my and I'll pop it up on the Facebook group. Anything like that really helps, and I think it gets you to nail it. That way you got that visual all the time. Sweet. We'll leave it there, team. Hopefully you have an awesome day, and looking forward to seeing that holiday destination up on the Facebook group. I'll catch you all soon. Have an awesome day.